Mr. President.
Senator from Idaho.
Mr. President, the current voting rights proposals, or so-called voting rights proposals that the Democrats are proposing, are not about increasing access to the ballot box. According to the Washington Post, the 2020 election saw the highest voter turnout in 120 years, and 94% of the voters said that voting was easy. These bills are really a power grab that would circumvent and federalize our entire elections process, stripping states of their constitutional authorities. These power grabs would force taxpayers to pay for political campaigns, expand the practice of ballot harvesting, prohibit important voter ID laws, keep deceased people and those who have moved out of the area on registration rolls, and federalize election laws, which would violate the Constitution's clear directive that states administer the elections. To name just a few. Article 1, Section 4 of the United States Constitution delegates election processes to the states. This is a union of 50 states. States are the best equipped to implement and enforce election policies that protect the integrity of all future elections. And although many who've spoken today would have you believe that the states across this nation are seeking to violate the rights of American citizens and restrict their access to voting, the laws that are being proposed and adopted by the states are doing just the opposite. They are helping to expand voter access and improve security at the polls. There are a lot of myths and untruths running rampant because the Democrats seem to want the public to think there is this widespread voter suppression in Republican-led states, which there is not. A couple of myths and the facts. Myth: Republican state legislatures are enacting laws that will roll back early voting. The fact is that the states are expanding early voting. Georgia's bill, for example, which has been attacked, allows for and provides for, mandates 17 days of early voting, with 2 additional optional Sundays of early voting. The list goes on. Arizona allows 26 days. Iowa allows 20 days. Texas, another state that has been attacked, allows 17 days. The fact is the states are expanding early voting. Myth: States are implementing voter ID for vote by mail in order to disenfranchise voters. The facts: as vote by mail is increasing in the states, and the states are implementing some of the same safeguards that are used for in-person voting to ensure a secure election, such as voter ID, which the legislation before us seems to want to prohibit. Recent polls show that 80% of the people support being required to show ID in order to vote, including 62% of Democrats. Myth: prohibiting ballot harvesting and requiring people to vote in their own correct precinct constitute discrimination, outlawed by the Voting Rights Act. Fact: in a recent Supreme Court case, the court ruled 6-3 against this claim. Arizona law mandates that voters must vote in their assigned precinct, and those who vote early by mail cannot have anyone other than a household member, a family member, a caregiver, a postal worker, or an elections official collect their ballot. In other words, supervised ballot collection. This law effectively bans the practice of ballot harvesting. The Democrats seem to want to expand, even mandate ballot harvesting in the legislation we are being asked to support tonight. Myth: states are improperly purging eligible voters from their voter rolls. Fact: states are taking reasonable measures to ensure their voter rolls are accurate, which makes elections more efficient and fair. States are simply implementing a time-honored practice of cleaning up voter lists, removing voters who have died or who have moved or who have been declared incompetent by a court or convicted of a felony. a time-honored practice in many of the states across this nation. Myth: recent changes in Georgia to prevent people from giving bottles of water is inhumane and targets minority communities. Fact: the law allows poll workers to set up self-serve water stations for voters to use. The statute prevents political organizations from giving people in line things like meals, water, or gifts. Once again, this is a long time honored practice in our states. This law of anti-electioneering or anti-vote buying is standard practice in many states, including many of my colleagues' blue states, like New York, New Jersey, and President Biden's home state of Delaware. So let's get on to the filibuster. The argument is, since the Republicans won't accept these wrong-directed reforms, so-called reforms of our election laws, that we should eliminate the filibuster in the Senate. That is the last thing that should be done in the Senate. President Biden himself has argued against eliminating the filibuster, and according to a recent report, Democrats used that filibuster over 300 times in 2020. In 2005, then-Senator Joe Biden gave a passionate floor speech defending the Senate filibuster, saying that this is a key procedural tool and ending it would eviscerate the Senate and do a disservice to the country and would upset the constitutional design. In another floor speech, then Senator Biden further argued the reason Republicans in Congress were attempting to end the filibuster was because they controlled every level of government. He went on to point out that the reason to have the filibuster rule was so that when one party controls all levers of government, one man or one woman can stand on the floor of the Senate and resist the passions of the moment. Again, in 2005, Senator Chuck Schumer also said that eliminating the filibuster would be a doomsday for democracy. That would turn our country into a, in his words, banana republic. Former Senator Robert Byrd of West Virginia wrote about preserving the filibuster. We've heard it many times today. He said, "We must never, ever tear down the only wall, the necessary fence that this nation has against the excesses of the executive branch and the resultant haste and tyranny of the majority." He went on to say the Senate has been the last fortress of minority rights and freedom of speech in this republic for more than 2 centuries. And he said, "I pray that senators will pause and reflect before ignoring that history and tradition in favor of the political priority of the moment." As Leader McConnell quoted on the floor yesterday, the smallest majority we've seen in our politics is trying to change the rules for how people get elected in every state. You may recall Republicans were asked to do this exact thing when we controlled every lever of government. And we refused to make that change because of the importance of the filibuster to this institution. Eliminating or weakening the legislative filibuster would destroy the intentional design of the Senate by the world's most deliberative body. It would allow any small majority in the Senate to strip the voice of millions of Americans considered in the minority. Removing the ability to filibuster legislation would reduce the incentive for the Senate to forge broad agreements and force further debate, and would likely increase divisiveness rather than efficiency. I urge my colleagues to vote against this federal takeover of our state's constitutional right to manage their own elections, and I urge my colleagues to reject this unfounded assault on the Senate filibuster. Thank you, Mr. President.